And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello everyone, I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan, and this is your Alaska Aviation Weather Outlook on this Friday, October 3rd, 2025. And to set things up for this weekend, we're going to have a strong area of low pressure with a broad circulation that's going to be extending eastward into the mainland and into the Gulf. We have the low that'll be sitting and spinning out here to the northwest of St. Matthew, west of St. Lawrence Island, and then in a front that's going to be pushing inland. And as that happens along this front, there will be some gusty winds and potential for some low-level wind shear, as well as a lot of rain down here along the especially Alaska Peninsula, pushing up on into the western Gulf as we go through the day Saturday and into Sunday morning. Meanwhile, with warmer air coming in off of the Bering and North Pacific, we're going to see any snow levels rising because there's quite a good push of mild air that's going to be coming up into the southwest and west central interior and trying to push eastward into the Gulf. We do expect IFR conditions Saturday morning, a pocket here maybe in through the lower panhandle of British Columbia mountains there around Hyder, and then central west arm of the Alaska Range through the passes there from near and just west of Isabel through Windy Pass down toward Lake Clark and Merrill. And then up here to the north, extensive IFR conditions along parts of the central north slope, Brooks Range, Seward Peninsula, and then back out over the northern Bering, including St. Lawrence, and down to Nunavik Island. Also, you're going to have some gusty winds. We get to have some gale force winds. There are high surf advisories along the Seward coastline, the west and southern coastline, and areas of the lower Yukon have a coastal flood advisory in effect because of these stronger winds that are going to be associated with that front coming in later this Friday night and certainly Saturday morning through Saturday night. And on Saturday afternoon, widespread IFR conditions, lower Chukchi, Kotzebue Sound, Seward Peninsula, extending up the south slopes of the Brooks Range, middle lower Yukon, along through the lower portion of the Alaska Range, and then out here into the Gulf. Rain areas will be expanding, lowering ceilings and some visibilities. And then for Sunday, we just still have the low sitting out in this area with a front coming down like this. Little secondary development keeping IFR conditions along the Gulf, eastern Kenai, western Prince William Sound, extending into the northern and outer areas here of the Panhandle. And then Sunday afternoon, pretty extensive IFR conditions around the Gulf Coast, especially eastern Kenai, through at least Sitka and into the northern Panhandle. And then further north, we have IFR conditions along the central west arm of the Alaska Range. Again, southern slopes of the Brooks Range and along the Yukon River, east there of Norton Sound. And so pass conditions, not good Saturday and Sunday. Anaktuvuk Pass IFR conditions will prevail there. And as we go further south and west, Lake Clark, Merrill, MVFR becoming IFR. It'll be a rather short-lived MVFR, if at all. And then Rainy Pass generally socked in with the IFR conditions Saturday. Same thing, Windy Pass, IFR. And then Isabel Pass, definitely IFR conditions just immediately west of the pass, maybe hanging on to MVFR, kind of on that edge between MVFR and IFR. And then further east, some drier air, Mentasta Pass, VFR conditions expected. Tanita Pass may start out with some VFR conditions Saturday morning, giving way to MVFR. And then in the Prince William Sound area, definitely IFR conditions will be pulling back up into Portage Pass, MVFR becoming IFR. And then finally in the far northern Panhandle at Chilkoot and White, should hold on to VFR conditions during the day on Saturday. So looking at the freezing levels at the surface Saturday morning, it runs down along the coastline of Kamchatka and eastern Russia, and then cuts across the Seward Peninsula into the central interior, and then of course around the Alaska Range, the Talkeetna, Chugach Mountains, Wrangell, St. Elias. You get a little elevation, be colder there. But otherwise the trend is, with this low pressure sitting back here, the frontal system arcing ahead, we have this warm moist air coming northeastward. So it's going to cause the freezing levels or the snow levels to rise. And we find freezing levels out over the Gulf at or above 8,000 feet, 8 to 10,000 foot freezing levels Saturday morning just outside of their Kuskokwim and Bristol Bays. And again, you're going to have those brisk winds causing high surf and potential for some minor coastal flooding. Saturday, icing Where we have the front and precipitation, thicker cloud cover that's producing that precipitation, higher freezing levels, so moderate icing will be a possible northern northwestern Gulf above 10 and 12,000 feet. As we go back toward the southwest and western interior, we find freezing levels above 8 and 6,000 feet here in the Seward Peninsula, but with the potential for moderate icing associated with any of the thicker cloud cover and those that are producing precipitation there, especially through the central and back through the west coast, extending up from the lower Yukon Delta all the way up along the Chukchi coast north of the Lisburn Peninsula. So we have a very defined ridge for Saturday out over the Gulf North Pacific interface. Look at this broad, this is what we'd call an anticyclonically curved jet, because we have this high pressure, and over northwest Canada, broad area of 110 knot or so winds. On the backside of the ridge, we have 115 knot wind max in the southeast corner of the Bering Sea, north of the Alaska Peninsula, coming on up into Kuskokwim Bay. And then on the backside, broad trough here. The surface low is sitting back in this region. And on the backside of the trough, wind max of 95 knots there at 30,000 feet. And notice the winds. This area of low pressure out here in the Bering has a broad wind field associated with it. 9,000 feet, 700 millibars. Look at this 40, 50 knot, even 60 knot wind max there, well southeast of the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island. This is transporting this warm, moist air. This is going to be feeding a fair amount of rain here across south central, the western Gulf, into the Alaska Peninsula as we go through Saturday into Sunday. And then we have another bit of a enhanced wind area to 50 knots there, approaching Nome, coming up through the eastern Bering. And so at 3,000 feet on Saturday, here's the low circulation out here, kind of tucked away in the western or northwest quadrant of the Bering Sea, with the strongest winds out there toward the Gulf of Anadyr, easterly winds to 70 knots. But ahead of this system, we have this broad wind field transporting moisture northeastward up into the Gulf. We have winds in through around the Alaska Range, 50, 40 knots here. You get near and west of Iliamna on the west side of the Alaska Range. And then this broader field of south-southwest winds coming up along the Yukon coast and into Norton Sound, and especially the west and south sides there of the Seward Peninsula. So, of course, we're going to find extensive turbulence on Saturday across a broad area of the state. First, we'll talk Alaska Range. There's a high wind advisory through the passes and along the ridge lines there. Certainly the turbulence, moderate turbulence likely, and it's going to extend, well above 10,000 feet, 15,000 feet. But for areas along the Gulf, Prince William Sound outside of Hinchinbrook entrance, outside of Kennedy entrance, surface to 5,000 feet. There could be some low-level wind shear in this region of lower Cook Inlet because of where the front is going to be located. And then back all across the southwest interior here, surface to 4,000-foot turbulence with low-level wind shear, and that extending up into the Seward Peninsula, because again, this front arcs like that. Then back behind it, southwest flow, we have surface to 3,000-foot turbulence, again, potential for some low-level wind shear. And we have that moderate turbulence extending southward down through St. Matthew and the Pribilovs. And then as we trail out along the Alaska Peninsula back into the central western Aleutians, their broad area of moderate turbulence, surface to 3,000 feet on Saturday.